Another twist in a deadly love triangle case out of Virginia. A once loving father and husband is now arrested for his wife's murder. Prosecutors say it's all because he was having an affair with the family's live-in nanny. And she's involved in all this too. Investigators arrested her nearly 1 year ago, and she's already set to go to trial this fall. There's a lot to unpack with this case, and for that, we'll turn to expert attorney Randy Kessler. I'm Gillespie, and this is Law&Crime News. Now, this is a story we've been covering for about a year, but the crime dates back even farther than that, to winter 2023. It happened in Herndon, Virginia, about 35 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. That's where the Banfield family lived. Husband Brendan, wife Christine, and their 4-year-old daughter. Also living in the home, their au pair or live-in nanny, then 23-year-old Juliana Peres Magalhaes. It was 7:49 a.m. on February 24, 2023, when investigators say a 911 call was made by Juliana Peres Magalhaes' phone. There was an issue with the call and dispatch didn't get any information, but 13 minutes later, another 911 call came in from the same phone, but this time it was 38-year-old Brendan Banfield on the line. When first responders arrived on the scene, they found Christine Banfield with several severe stab wounds. They also found 38-year-old Joseph Ryan, who was pronounced dead on the scene. Ryan's connection with the family is still somewhat of a mystery, which we'll get to in a minute. Right away, paramedics rushed Christine to the hospital, where she was later pronounced dead. Back on the scene, investigators found 2 firearms and a knife. And here's the story they got from Brendan and Magalhaes after the murders. At about 7:30 that morning, Magalhaes left the Banfield home with the 4-year-old daughter. When she realized she'd forgotten their packed lunches, she turned around and went back home. Magalhaes says she arrived to find a car she didn't recognize in the driveway. Together, Magalhaes and Brendan Banfield say they went to the 2nd floor of the home, and that's where they say they found Christine with serious stab wounds. They say Joseph Ryan had attacked Christine, so Brendan sprang into action and shot Joseph Ryan. There's a lot of names here, so let's clear this all up. Brendan Banfield is the husband in the case, who worked as an IRS agent. He says he used his service weapon to shoot Joseph Ryan, who he'd never met before. After the shooting, Joseph Ryan was still alive, so Brendan allegedly told Magalhaes, the au pair, to grab another gun so Joseph Ryan could be shot again. As detectives dug deeper into the murder investigation, they began to find interesting circumstantial evidence against both Brendan and Magalhaes. To start, prosecutors believe Brendan and Magalhaes were having an affair, and that the motive in the case was so that they could live together without his wife. When searching Brendan's bedroom, the one he shared with his wife Christine, investigators found framed pictures of he and Magalhaes together. Prosecutors have described her as a, quote, live-in lover, saying they also found her lingerie in the same bedroom. On top of that, prosecutors say Brendan and Magalhaes went to a shooting range together a couple months before the murders. Then, just 1 month before the murders, Brendan returned to that same shooting range and purchased a gun. So that happened a month before the murders, but just days before, both Brendan and Magalhaes got rid of their phones, trading them in for new ones. If you're watching this video, it means you're a fan of Law&Crime, and I know that means you're a go-getter. Some of you may even own your own businesses or thinking of starting a side hustle. I have to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Odoo. It's a free all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications to help with the day-to-day of owning a business. That's things like managing PTO, customer relations, or even different subscriptions. Here's the kicker. You can try Odoo for free right now without even entering your credit card. You can even get free lifetime access to one of the apps in the Odoo suites. So click on our link, odoo.com/LCnews in the description and pinned comments and try Odoo for free right now. Detectives collected electronic evidence from a computer in the family home, showing history of visiting a sex fetish website. The site apparently involved kinks, BDSM, and other fetishes. There, investigators found a profile for Christine, but they say the messages she sent don't really add up. According to friends and family, the way the messages are written on the site is not how Christine usually would write her texts or emails. Even still, there are messages showing someone with Christine's username speaking with Joseph Ryan, the other victim. Detectives believe someone else was writing these messages, scheduling a meetup at the family home for the day of the murders. So the double murder happened last February, and about 8 months later, Magalhaes was arrested and charged in Joseph Ryan's murder. She's been in custody ever since and is set to go to trial in November. Fast forward to this week Monday, when investigators issued another search warrant at the Banfield family home. Officials haven't said what was collected, except that some newly gathered information led to Brendan Banfield's arrest. He was indicted by a grand jury on 4 charges of aggravated murder and use of a firearm in commission of a felony. Now he's being held without bail. So why did it take so long for Brendan's arrest? And what does this mean for the future of Magalhaes' trial? For all that, we turn to attorney Randy Kessler.
No, I just think this is the kind of case that the public, is interested in, because, people that would do one thing, how far do you go and how bold do you get? And, and P. Diddy case is all over the news, and he had money, power, control, and yet he wanted more and he needed more. I think those are the kind of cases that the public is interested in, is when is enough enough? When can a human being be satisfied? And it's not enough just to be cheating. You want to make sure that you can have the rest of your life alone with her. And that's sort of the easy story to believe. And the flip side is the good people are thinking that's not what he did, and it's not true. And we're just trying to find a way to bring closure and blame somebody. They have another good defense, which is this guy, John Ryan, was a bad guy and did it. And let's just blame it on him. And despite the fact that the husband wasn't faithful, the wife wasn't faithful either, he's already suffered. He lost his wife. He's been under the, cloud of suspicion. Enough is enough. So which way is the jury going to go? What's the evidence going to be? Fascinating.
When you're going through and researching a case like this, learning the facts and details, what's going through your mind?
What were they thinking? Right? It's just assuming the worst. And lawyers by nature are cynics, because we have to prepare for the worst and think, if the worst happened, how do we defend it? I just think, people cheat. People have affairs. And so he was cheating with the au pair. That carries a lot of risk, inherent risk and financial risk. But what makes somebody think, I'm going to get away with this, and it's worth the risk of being caught and being put in jail for the rest of your life? I just don't understand. What can be worth that risk? It'll never make sense to me.
Well, this is a story we've kind of been following for a while, because the murders happened way back in February 2023. Then the au pair was arrested in fall of 2023, and now here we are, fall of 2024, and the husband is arrested. I'm wondering, why did it take so long for the husband to be arrested and charged?
That's what makes it interesting, and the best is yet to come, right? There was some piece of evidence that we don't know yet, some witness, some text, some admission, some recording that has him saying, listen, if we pull this off, we can get married. Or there's some piece of evidence, some kernel, some, smoking gun, as we like to say, that's got to come out, because otherwise they would have arrested him before. But now to feel confident enough that they can arrest him, or maybe she confessed, maybe she said something. I can't wait to see what it is, but it's something that they're going to have to use as their starting line when they start off with the jury trial and say, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what ties this case together. And here it is. And it's the proverbial smoking gun, the text, the confession, the video. I want to know what it is.
Well, investigators have said they do have a new piece of information, some sort of evidence, kind of what you're saying, that helped lead to the husband's arrest, but we don't know exactly what that is. So what do you think would be big enough for them to be like, okay, we're finally going to pull the trigger more than a year after the arrest?
Maybe she's innocent. Maybe he told her, listen, I think there's a break-in at my house and I need you to protect my wife. Who knows? Maybe she concocted a scheme to blame it on him, and maybe she's really the guilty person. It's something, devious like that, and it'd be interesting to see what it is. But, sometimes we let two defendants like this point a finger at each other, they both get off, right? Because there's reasonable doubt for one that maybe it was the other one, and the other one says there's reasonable doubt maybe it was the other person. They've got to feel pretty confident. And it's a little scary as a prosecutor, right, to think there are two people and I don't have either one dead to rights. And if they're each pointing the finger at each other, which I imagine is probably going to happen, then what if they both create enough doubt about their story? Maybe they pull it off after all.
Talking about what led up to the husband's arrest and his indictment, there was a grand jury that was called. And these are always so interesting to me, because obviously we don't know what went on there behind the closed doors. It's not made public. I'm wondering, though, if you could infer what you think happened in the grand jury hearings.
I can't escape the conclusion that the relationship had a lot to do with it, right? If these were four strangers, the man and the woman in the house and the man and the woman that came in it, that would be different. But the fact that there was, a wife, and the fact that there was an au pair, which by the way carries a stigma, right? There's always that stigma of, oh, the au pair, the younger, the newer model, the whatever it is, and the relationship between the husband and the au pair. And people want to lead to that conclusion that not just were they having an affair, but they conspired to murder his wife. I don't know how you get that out of the au pair, out of the grand jury members' minds, but other than that, there has to be something to tie them to it, and maybe it's the lack of any other explanation. Maybe there's no other good reason, because this guy that was killed and the wife never were violent and had a good explanation for why he was in the home. But it's some combination of all that. And again, the grand jury doesn't have to decide that he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to decide there's enough there that they could probably get a conviction based on that evidence. So there's probably enough there. But what it was, we're going to see for sure when you get trial.
Actually taking a look at that other person that's involved, if we're just looking at the story, it makes sense. We have a husband, a wife, and an au pair who lived there. It kind of checks out something we've heard before. But now there's another person who died in the home that's kind of mysterious. We don't really know his connection that well. And there have been some reports that potentially he and the wife met online, or someone who's pretending to be the wife met him online. So we are kind of familiar there, but there's still a lot of question marks about this victim, Joseph Ryan. Is that something you think investigators, prosecutors are really going to zero in on?
Maybe the husband and the au pair called him and said, you need to go to my house. Or maybe he was a repairman and said, I've got a faulty HVAC system and you need to go in there. I'll pay for it. The door's open. Just go in. Maybe it was a setup and he's, another innocent victim. But yes, why was he there? It just seems a little too convenient, right? We need an excuse. I can't just go home and shoot my wife. I need to be able to find the reason. And you read a lot of books or you see a lot of movies about passion murder, right? It's not really premeditated if you show up and you find your wife sleeping with somebody else, or you show up and you feel like you're in danger and there's a break-in and this guy is a threat to you and you act in self-defense and stand your ground. And all these legal defenses people read about, lay people hear about, and maybe makes them feel better. And it's a little bit more plausible than, why would the au pair shoot her boyfriend's wife except because it was intentional? So there has to be another explanation. So it's a little easier for the defense to have a reason for why the murder took place or the killing took place. But yeah, why he was there, I want to see and I want to find out. I imagine prosecutors now have some idea of what he was doing there. But yeah, it's interesting. So far, no connection.
We do know the husband and the au pair told kind of similar stories, that Joseph Ryan had been stabbing the wife, Christine, and that's why they kind of sprung into action and ended up shooting him. It's not quite self-defense, it's more kind of what you're saying, stand your ground. Do you think that's what the defense is going to use when it comes to trial, that he was actually just trying to protect his wife?
Well, it's a good story, and I don't mean that in the sense that it's a good lie. It may be true, because it is plausible. The forensics are going to have a lot to do with it. Was the wife really stabbed? Was the stabbing after the fact where they manipulated it and they stabbed her and then put the fingerprints of the man on it? And what's the man's background? Has he got some deep, dark secrets? But so far, we haven't been able to see that. The public hasn't had access to know if he's got some sordid history. So that's what makes this interesting. You could argue either way. And the problem for our prosecution is it's not just tipping the scales, right, Sierra? It's got to be, you got to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And who are the eyewitnesses? The defendants. Those were the only eyewitnesses that are still alive. It's their word against who? It's their word against forensic evidence, and it's their word against suspicion, and it's their word against, what we all think and want to think the worst of, people that cheat and their au pairs. So it's an interesting case. I think that most people on the jury are probably going to think the au pair and the husband did it. Are they going to think that beyond a reasonable doubt? So far, I haven't seen evidence that would convince me beyond a reasonable doubt, but that's what we're going to see.
There's also several articles that mention this website. It was kind of a fetish, kink BDSM website. Apparently the wife had been on it, or someone using the wife's name or username. And also apparently this is where that person using the username met Joseph Ryan. Is this something that is going to be involved in the trial? I know it's salacious and it makes headlines, but is it something that should be mentioned then?
Oh, I think it does feed right into the narrative that, we caught the wife there with this guy, and either she was cheating with him, which is not a good enough reason to kill her, or, you know, she had a relationship with him and the husband didn't know anything about it and they were surprised and this guy had a weapon and, you know, they've already lost the chance to say he attacked them, but, you know, it feeds into an explanation because the jury's going to want to know why was that guy there. You really don't have to prove why he was there. You just have to prove that the au pair and the husband killed them. But everyone wants to know motive, right? Why was somebody there? This might explain why he was there. They were in a relationship, and it wasn't a real good, long-term, friendly relationship. It was someone that was under suspicious circumstances. So maybe this guy did have some question marks around him.
So the au pair was arrested about a year ago, and now she's headed to trial in the fall in November. I mean, obviously this is on the way. The husband was just arrested. I'm interested to see, is that something that would be mentioned at her trial, that the husband was just arrested?
You know, you may not want to hear this, but there may not be a trial, right? Now that he's arrested, and now that she sees an opening, if I was her lawyer, I'd say, you know, you've been in jail for a year. How does it feel? You want to get out? You want to get out sooner? You know, you testify against him, and you probably will get out a lot sooner than if you go to trial because everybody wants to point the finger at her. She's almost guilty until proven innocent in most people's lives. So I would be shocked if that went to trial or if it didn't get delayed to try to put pressure on both to talk about each other. But yes, if it does go to trial, to answer your question, that's going to be the defense, right? The husband did it, or the husband put me up to it, or the husband told me that I had to take care of this. And whatever the defense is, it's got to have some part of it blaming the husband.
That's interesting that they might work on some sort of plea deal, potentially flipping the au pair to get more information. So is it possible then that prosecutors do this and she becomes kind of a star witness for the state against her ex-lover, this husband in the case?
It is possible. I don't think they can let her out of jail. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's a reduce your sentence because, like I said, there are no other eyewitnesses except those two people. And without those two people, it's hard to get a conviction when there was no one there to why, even if you have forensics. I mean, we go all the way back to O.J. Simpson. There were no living eyewitnesses. There was DNA, there was blood, there was this, but you didn't have an eyewitness and you didn't have a confession. And so if you get one of the two people that were there to confess or to say what happened, that's huge for the prosecution. That's a slam dunk, guaranteed conviction. If you can get somebody, one of the two, to say the other one did it.
Going back to these charges against the husband, obviously what's interesting here is it's almost been 2 years, a year and a half really, since the murder occurred. A search warrant was issued way back then, but then just this week, another search warrant was issued. This is kind of interesting to me again, because obviously it's been a year and a half. People have come and gone throughout the house. The house has been cleaned. Things have obviously changed. So is it possible that they gathered any useful information when this recent search warrant was served?
Who knows? They might have just been going to look to see if her story adds up. She said, the room looked like this. I looked around the corner and I couldn't see anything. And they're going to verify, because some things don't change in the house, right? The walls don't change. The doors don't change. So maybe it's just something about the layout and they wanted to see that. But who knows? Or it might have just been something as simple as a new person was hired by the prosecution who comes in, graduates law school and says, I've got an idea. I want to check out this theory. And they look at it from a different angle. It's hard to understand why, but you know, like I say, always, better to measure twice, cut once. So they're going to go look at the crime scene again. Maybe they're just going fishing, seeing what else they can come up with. But I imagine they've got some ideas that they want to be able to say her story does add up or doesn't add up. And we've now been there to do the diameters and the geometry and the math on the angles and the views and the time it took to get from one room to the other. Who knows? There's a lot there, but they're taking the time on it, which is good. Even though it's been a long time, it's still good to be diligent and get it right.
Moving forward, what are you thinking? We don't know the entirety of the prosecution's evidence list, but we have been told some of what they have. They've kind of shown their cards a bit. Do you think they have a strong case against the husband?
You know, if they have innuendo and supposition and inference and implication all on their side, right? They've got, you know, the worst of people that want to believe the worst are going to believe this guy is a bad guy because he was sleeping with his au pair. You know, that is already something that he's saddled with. You can't just prosecute on that. I think they got more. I don't think they want to be the prosecution that goes to court and loses. Nobody wants to be that. You don't want to prosecute someone who might be innocent. So I'm guessing they've got something pretty good, whether it's her changing her tune and saying something, whether it's some new evidence, whether it's a piece of, you know, a text message. They got something. And I think that, you know, if they've got something strong. It might be plea deals. He's gotten away with murder, so to speak, if he's the one who did it for long enough. And if he knows that he did it, then he knows his day of reckoning is coming, and he's trying to minimize the day of reckoning and how long it's going to be. You know, a lifetime in jail is not something anybody wants. 10 years in jail is not something anybody wants either, but 10 years in jail versus a life in jail, you know, if he can cut a plea because he's got some damning evidence now against him, that's what he's thinking about.
If convicted, Brendan Banfield could face life in prison without parole, and Juliana Magalhaes could face up to 40 years behind bars. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.